Well, happy to say that Charlie Angus joins us in studio this evening. Charlie, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So here you have this news conference. You lay out this searing indictment of Donald Trump. You liken him to other authoritarian figures. You call him a threat. But ultimately the G7 is an economic gathering of democratic countries. The United States is the world's largest economy. It is also right now a democracy. Why wouldn't Donald Trump be in Kananaskis?
The United States is no longer a democracy. This is an authoritarian regime. I think there's an incredible naivety about dealing with Donald Trump. And I'm not blaming anyone for it, but we're dealing with in completely uncharted territory. Donald Trump has made clear again and again that he doesn't believe in the international rule of law. He supported Vladimir Putin relentlessly while undermining the Europeans. He's threatened Canada. He says that we don't have a right to exist. So we're dealing with an autocrat who sees us as a inclusive, diverse, equity-promoting country as a threat. I'm not saying that Prime Minister Carney is going to block Donald Trump at the border. I think that would escalate things dramatically. But we need to start talking much more clearly about the threat to democracy that is happening in the United States, because it's a threat to Canada and it's a threat to the world at this point.
Okay, you say we. Does that mean you expect those discussions to be had around the table between all the G7 leaders? Or are you talking about Canadians, while the world's attention is on Kananaskis, to be talking in one voice about this? What are you actually referring to there?
Well, one of the things that's really struck me since Donald Trump became elected, I think ordinary Canadians have stepped up. I think we were sleepwalking. I think Canada was sleepwalking to a mega-like disaster prior to Trump's election. But I talked to people from across Canada. The boycott has been an unprecedented powerhouse in terms of putting pressure on American states and putting pressure on supporters of Trump. I mean, $12 billion in vacation travel gone out the window. American wine sales to Canada down 90-some%. Canadians, I think, understand the threat. But what worries me is that we have this ability of sort of talking about Donald as though he's, oh, it's Donald, who he just says stuff. It's going to go, it's just him being him, when he's been very clear in his attacks on democracy, his attacks on the European allies. What I would like to see is that the Prime Minister works with our European allies, and I'm not here to undermine the Prime Minister at this point. I think it's all hands on deck for Canada. I don't think our premiers are stepping up the way they should be. I think some of them are actively undermining us. But we as a nation really need to be thinking bigger than just saying, well, maybe the budget will have something for Alberta, and maybe the budget will have something here. We need to be looking at how does Canada reposition itself in a world of gangster regimes. Maybe some of that will happen at the G6, and I say G6 because Donald Trump will be coming, I think, as a disruptor. We have to start building those links with the other countries.
Okay, building links for other countries, building resiliency is another way that people are putting it. But, at the end of the day, though, the United States still is this country's closest and only geographically connected neighbor. At some point, we're going to have to figure out how to work still with the United States. Or do you disagree with that premise?
I think what's really concerning here is, I mean, we've been neighbors, we've been friends, we've been intermarried, people travel back and forth across the borders. Well, the border is now a threat. When I talk to university professors in Canada who are told by their administrations they have to bring burner phones if they're going to cross the border. I mean, that's what happens when you go to North Korea. When we see people being arbitrarily detained and kidnapped, this is a country now outside of the rule of law. What's very concerning for Canada is that we live along the border. We live along the border with a country that we've never had to worry about, but now we have to worry. I think it's better to be talking about this and talking about this in the frank manner that we need to. This man is a threat to democracy. This man doesn't believe Canada has a right to exist. This man cheered on Vladimir Putin and said it was wonderful when he seized Ukrainian territory. I think Donald Trump thought we were pushovers. I thought he probably thought we were chumps, and we've shown that we aren't chumps. But it's really, really important that we maintain very strong vigilance. Maybe there will be a point that we come back to a better place. We're not going to come back to that place if America loses the rule of law and we see the rise of authoritarianism. We will not ever be able to come back at that point. But at this point, things are still in flux, and people are looking to Canada. From around the world, people look to Canada right now because it's a fragile line we're holding, but we're holding the line.
Yeah, fragile line, but it's also a fragile relationship because, to get back to the point I'm making, at the end of the day, the United States is this country's largest trading partner. Up until the disruption of boycotts and tariffs, the United States was where Canada was integrating the economy. There's going to be an element of that one way or the other going forward. Don't you agree?
Well, absolutely, we have to find a way forward. But I think the worst thing we could do would be to tiptoe around the threat. Maybe the best thing that Prime Minister Trudeau ever did in his 9 years in office was when Donald Trump threatened those outrageous tariffs, that the Prime Minister came back and said, we will go dollar for dollar. Because Americans need to feel the pain. The damage that they're doing to our auto sector, if we tiptoe around, we're going to see the steady bleed off of auto sector jobs, which will destroy the manufacturing centers along the 401 corridor. But if we go pound for pound, dollar for dollar, then that pressure is on in the United States. Again, going back to the boycott, we see that some key MAGA leaders and senators are now calling for Donald Trump to back off because of the Canadian pressure. So we have to negotiate with determination. It is insane, the attack that he's launched on aluminum. I mean, this is an industry that exists across borders. Agriculture, $70 billion in cross-border trade. It's causing havoc in the United States right now. They are suffering, I would say, they are probably starting to suffer more than we are. And we have to hold that. And maybe we get back to a place where the tariffs come off, and maybe we get back to a place where we can start to rethink how steel, how aluminum, how agriculture cross the border, because we are neighbors. But right now, we are dealing with a malignant threat.
Okay, I'm quickly losing time here, but I do have to ask. Kananaskis is just a few days away. Are you going to be involved in any protests during that meeting?
I will not be out there for protests, but I encourage every Canadian to step up. I encourage every Canadian to support the June 14th rallies. We have to be out in the streets. We have to send a message to our leaders, provincial and federal, that we deeply oppose the fact that a convicted criminal, a sexual predator, and a man who says our country doesn't have a right to exist is now visiting our nation. So I encourage people to go out and protest peacefully across this country, and I think you'll see Canadians out in big numbers.
Right now, your party, your former party, is going to be holding a leadership race. Are you going to run again?
I still have the T-shirts and the buttons from running before, and it was a great experience, but we do need to rebuild the party. We do need to rebuild social democracy, so I'm looking forward to hearing what plans there will be to actually rebuild a social democratic movement in this country after the disaster of that last election.
Charlie Angus, thanks for the time.
Thank you.